went back and found some footage that I recorded in my Samsung back during COVID. It was when I first started building helmets. I started using foam. I think this was about my third helmet build. But I used some patterns that I downloaded from Punished Props. So they had a very good tutorial on how to build Mandalorian and Boba Fett helmets. After I finished the first build, I made a couple of modifications, and hey, modifications are okay. And built a second helmet, decided it wasn't screen accurate still, and then I made some more changes, and that's the pattern that you see here. It's just really taking my time, cutting out accurate patterns, and transferring them. I actually used a sketchbook, so some heavier bonded paper to make these patterns, and then you'll see here I'm actually using this nice device that I picked up online to notch the patterns. This is very important because when you start curving flat pieces, you want to make sure that these registration marks are accurate on both sides so that you can line them up correctly. You'll also see that I've numbered the pieces, as well as I have even used letters to describe the edges. We're using some Harbor Freight floor matting. You can get a package of this for like 4 for about $10, $10 US, and you want to avoid these pit marks, but you can always fill those in later. But you can transfer your patterns onto this foam. It's 10 millimeters, so it's nice and thick, pretty durable. And I always like to use my sewing pins to keep my patterns in place. Some folks like to use heavy objects, and others just use one hand. I again prefer to keep them pinned in place. And you'll see I'm also transferring all of my registration marks as well as the lettered edges, so I can see where they line up. And this will make more sense as we move along in this build. You'll see how these pieces line up with each other. And you only have to print, or when you print this pattern, you're only going to get one side, so you just flip that over and you'll get the right side. You'll notice after the next video segment, you'll see me writing the right side registration marks. So again, you want to take your time, make sure these are accurate, transfer all of your information, and then here you'll see me marking the back side, creating the pattern for the right sides. So once you have those pinned in place, you can go ahead and start tracing them. I included this video segment just to show you that mistakes do happen. So those of you that are a little more keen to noticing details, you'll see here that I'm trying to draw the right side pieces of my helmet, and I've actually pinned the left side pattern for the 3L. It's best to catch it now, even if you've drawn with your Sharpie before you cut it. It's best to catch that mistake, and I did. I didn't draw it just yet, but I just flipped the pattern over and traced it. You can probably get one helmet out of one 2x2 sheet of this 10 millimeter foam if you space it correctly. So now we're down to the cutting. I have this nice Craftsman blade that I picked up from one of the box stores. You want to make sure that you cut your foam at a 90-degree angle. Again, take your time with this. And what you're really trying to do at this point is you're just trying to make your foam pieces manageable. So you want to cut this down into smaller pieces so that you're just not playing with this giant piece of foam. I had this on a small table in my living room at an older apartment, and you can see my tiny cutting mat that I used back then. It slides all over the place, so I needed to get this down into smaller sections, workable sections. I also started to notice when I was separating these pieces that the very tip of my blade was beginning to round off. It wasn't cutting all the way through. And I had, again, this was the third helmet build, so I had used this exact same blade for 2 other helmets. I just continued to sharpen it. But, you know, through wear and tear, the very tip of the blade started to round off. So you can see me breaking that off. And that was the good thing about this particular knife. You can actually just break off the old section and then start with a fresh tip. You can see the wrench is holding the old section that I broke off, and I'll get back to cutting. And watch how easily this blade cuts through the foam now. You'll see that the foam excess, the waste pieces just really pop off. You don't have to pull them or cut them again. You can see how it just separates very, very easily. And you also notice how smooth that cut is. And you want edges like this because it'll make it much easier to bond together when you apply your contact cement to both sides. So as long as you have a smooth edge, it'll seal nicely. So again, this was the first video, just cutting patterns or tracing patterns and cutting. I'm going to guide you through how I built this foam mock-up and eventually even created a silicone mold to slush cast a plastic resin helmet. So if you like this and you want to follow along with this build, please like and subscribe, and I'll try to get the next video up as soon as possible. I want to thank you all for watching, and yeah, feel free to go out and buy some Harbor Freight floor matting and build along with me.